Hey everyone, thanks for watching. This is the Ohio Valley Real Estate Report. I'm Johnny Kazumka with Harvey, Goodman, Realtor, meeting with Damon and Apple. We are talking about real estate investing today and their experiences. We've had a quick chat beforehand, but welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having
Thank
us.
you so much.
So you are coming all the way from California to be in our market to start investing, and you had quite a tale. So do you want to introduce yourselves to everyone watching? And yeah, we'll get started.
Absolutely. I'm Damon Levy. This is my wife, Apple Levy. We are here from California. We are investing in Ohio real estate. We are finding fix and flips and renovating them and bringing them back to current standards and the beauty that they originally had, and giving people the opportunities to purchase and live in their homes. These homes.
So from California, why the Ohio Valley?
We looked at many places when we were exploring the best places to go, and through some research, some good information from some friends, we ended up in Ohio, and then it was just a matter of where to go in Ohio. And then my wife started doing some researching, and one of the things we learned about real estate investing is that there were some criteria that needed to be met in order for an area to be desirable. And some of the criteria was shopping, malls, good school systems, good colleges, things like that, and crime level is another really important thing. That's got to be at a certain level. So we got our notebooks out, took some notes, and ended up finding Jefferson County and some of the surrounding areas that we felt would be the good place to make the jump to.
Sure. So in your experiences so far, you've bought multiple properties.
Yes.
And we've talked about sort of your goals as far as what you look for as an investor. So that's what we were explaining. As far as investing, it's all over the board. I've worked with investors that do flipping, specifically only flipping, then buying and holding, then commercial. And investing to me isn't necessarily what you're doing. It's sort of like the outcome, the goal of it. And as long as you at least make a profit. Nobody invests just to break even. So
Correct,
what have you seen with your experiences, and what are your goals? What do you look for as an investor?
We are really looking for consistency. We're looking for a place where we have, we buy the houses at the right price. For us, we're looking for relatively the lower dollar price houses that we can put a moderate amount of money in and flip them for a profit. As I was explaining, I kind of came up with this idea of this 30-30-30 model where it takes you 30 days to finish the house. It sells within 30 days and you make at least 30,000. It's not always easy to accomplish those numbers, but it gives you a barometer, I think, of where I think at least us, I don't know, other people, where we should be at least on a consistent basis when getting started. And then, as time goes on and you get better at the game, you start understanding it, you maybe kind of raise it up from there. Maybe it takes a little longer to finish a house, maybe make a little bit more money, and so on and so forth. But for us, we're looking at that gauge, and then we also consistency. So we want to be able to finish one property and then have another one right behind it, and so on and so forth, and just continue that consistently in our investing efforts.
Yeah, and it's good to have a clear-cut, defined set of goals, because I've worked with other investors that, one of the common phone calls that we get, at least from this side of the desk, is how do I get started? And real estate investing is one of the most stable forms of supplemental income that you can ever have. In fact, if you look at the metrics of most millionaires, it's not the professional athletes or someone that hit the lottery. Most self-made millionaires are some form of investors in real estate themselves. It's a stat. And there's a reason for that, because it's usually stable growth over time. Now, it's not drastic growth, like you're not going to get rich overnight of it. It usually takes 10 years to become that overnight success. But having that clear-cut goal, 30-30-30, I've never had any client ever come up with something like that. That's actually very intriguing. So hope you don't mind if I duplicate that later. But it's a good standard. And like you said, if it deviates a little bit or something, that's somewhat to be expected. But as long as you have that as your initiative, then you at least have a set standard in mind. Because if you jump into this, like we were talking earlier, and you don't have sort of the skill set or the finances behind you, and you make one mistake, you're done.
Right.
I mean,
It's expensive.
It's in, yeah, it can be an
yeah,
expensive, costly, painful. I mean, a life-changing mistake. And again, that's why I think a lot of people don't want to jump into it because they're scared of making that mistake. But again, that's what you're working with Tim. Tim Judkins, our producer, he's behind the scenes. But yeah, anyways, that's what the value of agents are here for, is to make sure that you don't make those mistakes. And speaking of, you've had some experiences already that you've kind of dodged a few bullets, so to speak.
Yeah, and we can touch a little bit on that. One of the things that, just from common sense and knowledge, is as we find properties and we write these offers on these properties, and that's where I think that the agents are incredibly important, because they keep people like us out of trouble, from making mistakes, from really creating a situation where it's over before it even begins, and we didn't want that. I mean, we're into this for success, and at the same time, one of the things we've realized and that we figured out is, especially on some of these older homes, these distressed homes, there's a lot of encumbrances that they have, title issues, water issues, property violations. And one of the things that our broker Tim Judkins helps us with is to write offers that prevent us from getting in trouble when these offers are accepted on these properties. So one of the things we'll put in these offers is clear title, no property violations, things like that. So that way, I mean, we were talking earlier about a situation where our property had a septic tank in it, and once we found out it had a septic tank, in the offer it clearly said it had to pass a septic inspection, because these are the things that, these details and these nuances are really, I think, one of the most important things, no matter where you do home renovation, because you see these things on TV. These people end up in these money pits. And believe it or not, somehow, some way, and it doesn't mean it's not going to happen, but this last year we've been very fortunate. We've made very sound decisions, and haven't really ended up in situations from common sense, and working with a broker and do this, don't do that, things like that, and to make sure that we make good purchase decisions. And then once we end up with the property, we know it's clean, it's got a clean title. We just, now at that point, it's time to get to work on it.
No, and that's well said, because this happens so frequently where, again, we get these phone calls because someone would be selling by owner and someone's buying it for sale by owner, and then they run into things like title issues. And for the general public, when you hear the term title, most people associate that with vehicular title, right? I mean, it's like, okay, this is what, the vehicle title defines ownership. It just says, okay, here's the title number, here's this, and that's that. Real estate title is broad. I mean, it's not anything defining ownership. It's sort of how you own the property. So whether you own it as a single person or married or an LLC or a partnership or whatever, there's 1,000 different ways you can combine this together. And you run into these issues that are so obscure, where someone may have missed a name on a deed that was supposed to inherit the property 20 years ago. And through some form of miscommunication, you buy the property, but it was actually owned by this person who was supposed to have it. And now you're the benefactor of all these legal issues that you never wanted.
You acquire them, absolutely.
Medicaid liens, debts. If someone racked up $50,000 on a Capital One credit card and attached it to the property, if you don't do a title search, you just bought $50,000 worth of debt. You didn't buy the house. You bought someone's credit card debt. And people don't understand that. And it's, again, I'm glad to hear you say this, because this is completely unbiased. You are... buyers yourselves. You're seeing this firsthand, and the knowledge that you're getting from someone's like Tim's services and helping with that is tremendous, because we don't want to see people make mistakes. We're here to help.
I mean, one of the things we see a lot of out here is people pick up multiple distressed properties, and this has been a learning experience. Is they pick up multiple distressed properties, 10, 15, 20, even 30, and they might pick them up for maybe $200,000. They'll pick them up, they'll pay cash for them, they'll title them however they want to title them, company name, whatever name it's in, and then they'll lien the houses. So they'll then pull money back on those properties through a bank. And they'll pull a bunch of money against them. Then they'll try to sell a couple of those houses as is. And if you're not careful, you can really end up in a situation, because to a certain degree, if something gets missed, you can end up having the title transferred on that property
very easily
with those encumbrances. And then you've now basically absorbed that. And one of the things we do is outside of the titling and outside of the work that our brokerage does is we do our own investigation on each property. We pull county records ourselves. We call the water if we need to directly. We had a situation where there was a property we looked at that had some old tax liability to the point where calls were even made to some of the tax authorities to figure out what was owed, what wasn't, is it connected to the house, things like that. So it's really almost some just basic, common sense, almost, general schooling stuff, of digging into the details, and understanding, look, we want to buy this house. It's got to be free and clear of all encumbrances. We got to be able to buy it, fix it up, and sell somebody a good product that they can move into and live in there for years and not ever have to worry about anything, be able to transfer the utilities and things like that. And you'd be surprised how sometimes it's challenging to do that. Not only here, but that's going to be anywhere. You're going to run into those issues. So that's definitely something.
Before we even place the offer, we have a list of due diligence to do.
Sure.
And that's just part of our routine, our groundwork, before we even sign the paperwork off, to place the offer.
Yeah, and it's good to have that discipline. In fact, I don't. You can't see it on the camera, but I do a lot of diving work, scuba diving work with the city of Wheeling. And what we always have is what's known as an SOP, standard of practice, and everything's the exact same for whatever the scene is, because it's important.
Yes.
That kind of thing is okay. That's life or death kind of situations at times.
Yes.
Well, to be honest, I would almost say that the same severity when it comes to investing, because if you're not that strict with your practice and you get sloppy. Like I said, one mistake, and you already seen what can happen. You mentioned a septic tank, and we'll talk about that as an issue here in a minute. But I mean, that could have been a pitfall of tens of thousands of dollars. And if you're not ready for that mistake, I mean that's painful to the point where you're out on strike one.
It's a complete loss.
Exactly.
You're basically, because there was no way through the effort, and we had, as I mentioned, we'd actually spend money. On our dime to have this excavated. Before we were going to put the thousands in, we spent hundreds because we felt the risk was important to determine if this was a viable property, because the upside was too great. So we spent the hundreds to save the thousands, and it turned out that there was nothing that could have been done once it found out that it had a bad septic tank.
Yeah, and arguably it's the best of all circumstances, because building inspections and title work and everything, surprisingly, is mostly voluntary. And a lot of people don't know this, especially when you're dealing with cash. Yeah. So for a first-time buyer, for example, possibly watching this, a building inspection, there is no such thing as passing or failing. A lot of people miss this all the time. It only passes or fails based off of the perception of what the buyer is looking for.
Correct.
Now, obviously, a building or a septic tank failure, every buyer that I know is going to be, hey, we either need to fix this or walk away. No one wants to buy a house with a broken septic tank. But as an investor, hey, if we can knock some money down off of this because we can do the work ourselves or we can subcontract it, that might make sense for you to stay involved. But it's one of those things, taking a little bit of a loss by paying for those inspections up front saves you from an enormous loss later. And it's critically important, and it's good to see that you have that structure. So, and Apple, so let's talk about your team for a little bit. So it's you, it's Damon Apple and your brother.
Yes, my brother.
And so you do a lot of the contracting as far as the material purchasing and sort of like the general routine as far as like the maintenance of the project. Is that right?
Right. So just backtracking a little bit. I mean, as we mentioned, we're from California, and then investing all the way in Ohio. It's not easy. You're not in the same place. The research, the people. So it was really important for us, number one, to find a great partner like Harvey, Goodman, and Tim to back us up. And secondly, before we could even start, we needed boots in the ground, as my husband had mentioned. And so part of our risk was, and my brother was willing to do it, to move to Ohio and really understand the lay of the land, the people, the place, and so that's a huge thing for us. And so it wouldn't even happen at all if my brother wasn't here.
Yeah. And your brother came here and slept in a car for a little bit. Is
right,
that right?
Yeah. and he was sick too the first couple of weeks.
And
we were working on a property at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. Go ahead. So he manages our crew here, and he's basically directs the task each day of what needs to be completed. Organizes everything here, and then I do the purchasing of all the materials needed. I do the recruitment for the team that we bring in, and as you know, with that, it's a revolving door. when it comes to a crew.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a constant thing. And then my husband, he handles most of the paperwork as far as communicating with Tim, new offers and things like that. But of course, before we place an offer on anything, the three of us would communicate to see
if it fits your goals.
if it fits our model.
And
No,
accept offers too.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, so that's
the
other-
most
yeah,
important
yeah.
part. Yeah.
Yeah, so what have you seen as far as like your goals for like 30-30-30, for example? Because I love that, by the way, still. With rising cost of construction, I mean, has that encroached into your overall goal? I mean, have you seen like much of that offsets for example, if you're dealing with the construction materials, the cost of a 2x4 was like 4 times higher than it ever used to be, not even more than 12 months ago.
I hear, the calls come in from her brother saying, do you know what we paid for plywood today? I think overall, even though you see this and from my experience, I think a lot of this is definitely calculated into everything that we're doing. At this point, I think we're feeling it. I think everybody's feeling it. How much are we feeling it? I mean,
well, we start off with numbers. I mean, that's numbers don't lie. That's how we have a spreadsheet before we even place the offer. We have an idea of what it would cost. Of course, we always blow that out of the water, but at least it gives you a baseline. And I do keep an eye on that on a daily basis of how much we're spending. Am I close to the budget that we had originally put down for it? And we're getting closer at each house because now you learn
As you get better, sure.
Yeah, exactly. So the material definitely is up there. So we have to. What's great here is found some discount places for like windows that are surpluses and things like that. So there are places here in town that do that have that offer.
That is an interesting point. We do a lot of which we will do a lot of Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. We'll end up in Pittsburgh picking up dishwashers or stoves. Somebody that picked up a stove, never used it, sitting in their garage, will pick it up for, in some cases, 10 cents on the dollar. I mean,
Sure.
So that's how we're offsetting, I think, some of these challenges now by not necessarily going and picking up a brand new stove, but yet it's a brand new stove. We're still at a fraction of the cost.
Yeah. So when you say discounted, it's not like it's a scratch and dent or anything. It's more,
no.
yeah, it's wholesale. It's basically
wholesale,
private
brand
ownership.
New, mid condition, and also the fact that my brother is in the military, is a Marine, so he gets military discounts, and you better believe we're
liens
asking.
on those.
Sure. Yeah.
So there's definitely she watches like a hawk because she's also a numbers person. Everything, and we're definitely always looking for ways. Once we understand what a project is going to need, where are we getting it from, and that kind of happens ahead of time. A lot of it comes in, and then that's when we start figuring out. There's stuff in Pittsburgh. There's stuff in West Virginia. I mean, we needed some parts for one of the furnaces we were working on at the duplex. We were already out. Took a drive all the way out to Triadelphia to pick up, because the only place that had them, and we ended up in Menards out there, finding it. So there's really no limits where we'll go to save money on supplies.
Sure.
You still have to cost it out to see, is it worth your drive out there, or I'm just we're just gonna buy it and this is how it is. So we price all that out as well. But definitely there's a lot of continuous work, and then once you find a deal and how much you need, you keep track of that, and I have it all on drives and things like that. So the next property, I know where to go get it. I know where how much to get, and
yeah, it's a learning curve. It really
such
is.
a learning curve with every property, though. We learn so much, and then once you're implementing all the things that you're learning, then your profit starts to increase.
Yeah. Well, and it's also, I mean, just talking to you we've been live for about 20 minutes. You can tell that there's a sense of pride in the work that you do. Because of the measures that you're willing to go to at least even entertain and doing these kind of things to make that successful. And again, that not knocking on different investors. Everyone has their own kind of prerogative. I've worked with other investors that just say, hey, I'm going to buy this at a sheriff's sale or an auction, and I'm just going to hold it. I don't care if it gets in worse condition. Property still keeps going up, and I'll sell it in as is condition. All I did was buy it today, hold it for 2 years, sold it again, and maybe made a couple $1,000s. That's a model. Right. I mean,
can I comment on that?
Sure.
So my comment on that, because we go back and forth on that, and I'll say it this way: there's always the rule and there's the exception to the rule, and I kind of defer back. But for us, that model is not going to happen. I'll explain why real quick.
I'm with you.
The challenge number one in not only where we're at, Ohio, Jefferson County, parts of the East Coast, rents are really, really low, extremely low. And when you're dealing with a 1,500 square foot house that you put a fortune into, and you're collecting $500 or $600 or $700 a month, to make the kind of money you're going to make when you flip it, I would be gray and in a wheelchair
by the time
you'd actually get. So when from a numbers point we look at it, and doesn't mean that there aren't other areas that command really high rents, which even medium rents, but we just where we're at. The rental income is just not enough, and that's why we look for the objective for the flip, and people that buy our properties are getting a great home at a great price. We're not overpricing them. It's what it should be. You don't want a brand new home. Now, ultimately, what our future and what we really want to be able to do, and we've already started this process, is the multifamilies, and that's where we're going to rent. Whether it's Pennsylvania, Cleveland, Columbus. It's the idea is the 15, 20, 30 units. So what we do from this ultimately ends up there potentially at some point.
Sure. Well, and it's a good talking point because a lot of the buyers that we get, everyone kind of lumps mortgages into these different categories. So old style conventional mortgages, then you have first time buyers, and you have other equity lines of credit, which you were talking about previously, people buying and then putting liens on the homes and that kind of thing. But a majority of the buyers that we work with around here are what we would call first time buyers. And it doesn't mean that they never bought a house before. They're just using some form of government backed financing. In fact, you can buy 10 houses with first time buyer loans. You don't have to be, not a homeowner to take advantage of this.
Correct.
And mainly because of that government security, when it's being lent from a government entity, the interest rates are so low because that safety net is there for whatever lending institution is issuing the loan. So buyers love to take advantage of that. Even investor clients will take advantage of that, depending on the scope of, you can't use it for income producing property. There's some limitations to that, but it's not uncommon to see that. You as an investor in flipping the houses and putting this work into it, basically taking something that was rough and turning it into this diamond, if something comes up with that buyer, that government-backed loan buyer, because okay, they got to get an appraisal. They might ask for a handrail, ask for electrical updates, that kind of thing. Most sellers don't have that skill set to be able to do that, and those deals end up not going through. So if someone's buying one of your properties, it's somewhat of an incentive because, okay, we can entertain some of these things you have to nuance around, which is, again, good for you because it's a...
Well, this is actually one of the biggest nuances we've dealt with over the last year.
Government-backed loans.
Yeah, because it is a challenge. Because for some of the government-backed loans, if a piece of paint is off,
that's right,
you run into an issue, and it could be challenging for people trying to buy the house that want the house. That the appraiser says, your nail isn't long enough holding the staircase in.
Sure.
With us, one of the things, and Tim and I have had this conversation, and he said that we're one of the few people he's seen that actually do this. We entertain through our properties buyers' request for repairs, things like that, within reason if it's needed.
Sure. To
secure the appraisal. And we've done that, and we will do. It's part of just our model of what we'll do. We just don't typically go out there and say, take it or leave it type deal. We are very flexible and very open because we understand from history that to get people into their homes sometimes it's a give or take type of thing. So there'll be some negotiations, things like that. But we will also we also are open to doing some additional work on some of the properties, like I said, within reason. To make them pass these appraisals, things like that. But it is a challenge.
Yeah, and especially things like first-time buyers. And if you really are working with a person who's buying their first home, you hear things like electrician, you hear plumber, you hear things, and you just start thinking dollar signs. So an inspection might reveal something that says reverse polarity. Or I had an appraiser one time say that the kitchen needed 6 GFI outlets. There's not even 6 circuits leading to the kitchen. So it doesn't even make any sense. And you kind of have to have that mindset. You have to have that knowledge base because if someone makes that request, it's nonsensical. And then a buyer will overreact because they don't know. All they think is, man, this house is going to be a giant electrical hazard. And really, reverse polarity is black's on white, white's on black. Just switch it
backwards. Yeah,
exactly. It's a simple fix. But if you don't know that, and all they want to do is walk away from the deal, hey, it's one of those things that people, when you don't know how to proceed, when you don't know what to do next, people tend to either don't do anything at all or they run away because they're too nervous. Because this is a big scale purchase.
Correct.
So it's good to have that background for you as far as any of your listings, to be able to work around that and give some of those buyers that comfort. That it's immensely helpful.
Well, one of the things we just started doing with I was powwowing with Tim about is we're actually paying and doing our own inspections. Well, not ourselves, but a licensed inspector on our pre-listed properties now.
Sure.
And now including the inspection report with the actual on the listing.
Sure.
So it does multiple things. Number one, it gives the people interested in the property the ability to see firsthand. Shows we're not hiding anything. It shows that, hey, this is what we've done. It gives some talking points per se for negotiations and things like that if needed. Some of the times we'll get the report, maybe just get the work done on it already. So we have felt that, and plus it'll speed up the whole buying and selling process too, because I think the buyers and the seller want to complete the transaction as fast as possible.
No one's ever said take your time.
But we have also found that the outside of the loans, because the loans have challenges, but I have found, and even in California, that the inspection process is probably one of the biggest challenges and headaches you go through in buying and selling a house. It just is. It's there's so much involved because, like you said, you have buyers looking at it getting scared, and a lot of times a lot of that stuff doesn't mean anything. It's you just need to push a gutter back in or something.
You know what you get when you look for dirt?
You
find dirt.
You
right?
find dirt, yeah.
You're literally paying someone to go in and discover all the dirt about the house.
Exactly.
And a good building inspector, they're going to tell you which doorknob is the loosest on the kitchen cabinets.
And that's their job.
That's their job. And it's the buyer's one chance to get that unbiased look to what I would refer to as the buyer's Bible. So you get this 40-page document, and some people, oh my God, there's 40 pages worth of stuff that's wrong with this house. It must be crazy bad. Reality is, it could be a new $1 million construction,
and they're going to find 40 pages.
40 pages.
That's what they do. The door, it needs an extra little sliver shaved off of. It's normal. They got to do it. They got to do it.
So it's good again, then you have that kind of knowledge base, because then even a seller at times, because if you've bought and sold, but you're maybe if it's a first time buyer selling their first house that they just that they've lived in for the past 10 years, and then this building inspection comes back. And oh my goodness, look at all this stuff that they found. How did my last building inspector miss this? They might not have included that in the report because it was non-essential. Like you're saying, like the door jamb may have shifted the little things like that. It's amazing to me how sometimes, and I understand it, because usually real estate's your single largest financial purchase in one swing. So of course you don't want things to come back that are negative. But I always try to coach my buyers and even sellers that let's not overreact. Let's be proactive about it, and let's talk about what this actually means. And a good building inspector is not just going to say, hey, this outlet has reverse polarity, and walk away. They're usually going to tell you, okay, while it does have this, here's also what it means, and they walk them through it. They'll give it like a color scale: red, yellow, or green.
And that's the other thing, is that the color scales, I think you pay attention to those on the reports, not just the pictures and what they've written. Look at the color scales, and then really, on a lot of these homes, you just whittle it down to just a couple of things.
And I've always said, if my buyers, if you're not ready to get a paintbrush, you're not ready to get a mortgage. You have to be willing to do some form of work.
As a homeowner,
because it's going to be surprising, even after buying a flip, because that's part of making it your own anyways. And you're probably going to run into issues that, maybe that weren't foreseen. You're going to be surprised how many times you run to Lowe's or Menards or whatever it is to get something on the weekend. But that's pride of homeownership. So,
absolutely.
So, any other stories as far as you mentioned buying one in Brilliance and
so we got our property for sale that we fully renovated up at 1752 Chester up in Wellsville. That one's on the market now. Our Brilliant duplex is we're winding down on this one. It's 1301 and 1313 Huckle. This is a beautiful property. This is a top to bottom, you'd think this was brand new construction, this house. I mean, from flooring to new stairwells to everything. It's got 2 kitchens, 2 brand new kitchens. All the ceilings are new, all the lighting, all new electrical from the street coming into the house, all done. All new siding on the property. Roof is relatively new on the house, a couple of years old on this one. So we're really putting a lot of pride into this one. This one's a beauty, and plus you got the bridge.
Yeah,
that there should be done in fall, and so we are timing things. The house, should be ready in spring, and we've got all new baseboards, all new windows in the house. So this is an exciting one. I mean, I looked at this house. I'd live in this house myself.
Yeah.
And the location is magnificent. It sits on a hill. The view of the bridge, the view of the water. It's really
you could sit on the balcony and get a full view of the Ohio River.
Well, and again, it's the best time to buy is always 5 years ago. So someone taking advantage of that, if you let's just say you have your house done in the spring and it's that 30-30-30 rule, so you're done here, you want to sell it in 30 days, and everything, if that comes through, even a buyer buying that is going to be the benefactor of any equity that is created through that bridge itself and connecting those.
Absolutely.
So it's not just a first-time buyer in it themselves right now. If let's just say that's someone that bought it, they inadvertently became a real estate investor overnight without even knowing it, because they're taking advantage of things that external factors that the market's going to that we know that bridge is happening. The cracker plant that everybody keeps talking about may happen. A lot of people say it still will, but we know that bridge is going in place. So why not jump in while first money in and you want to be the last money out.
Exactly. So we're excited about this house, and we saw it too as some foresight we had earlier on.
Through Tim.
Through Tim, of course. Tim was like, we the first thing
you
we
have
did
to
duplex,
see this.
and we didn't. One of the things in real estate, we don't want to trip over dollars to pick up dimes. I know we talked about it, and obviously we're very, very picky. We hold our grounds, but sometimes when it comes to certain homes like the duplex and stuff, if you're a couple grand off, you eat it, because the upside is far greater.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And we really pick and choose when we're going to walk. We definitely have walked for more than we've purchased, but that's the name of the game. That's part of it.
Sure.
It's part of the enjoyment and doing what we're doing, and we'll continue to do it. And like I said, for us, it's the objective is really carving out an area and a niche where the desirability to live is at a higher level. And that's really, I think, very important, is picking and understanding your areas that you want to be in, shopping and low crime and schools and all that. That's anywhere USA.
Sure.
You'll run into it, so
Well, as far as any other advice for anyone that's thinking of getting into investing, or anything you want to add? We've been live for about 35 minutes now. So
I would say this, because I've actually prepared an answer to this question on top of all the things we've talked about. I would tell people this: you're gonna need people. Really learn how to be a people person. Learn how to recruit. It's a hard business, and I got a background in it for many, many years, and I think that's made a big difference. But you got to learn how to create people loyalty. You got to learn how to just be a people person and take care of people. That's the most important thing, and we take care of all of our people. They do right by us, we do right by them, and they don't go anywhere. And that's a challenge, especially when you're dealing in a environment where there's a lot of stuff going on. You got wood and you got construction and you got nails, and you need a really good chief. And that's where her brother, his military background, he has coffee every morning with everybody. On Fridays he'll get pizza, and he'll have a conversation. Here's what we're working on today. You're on this project, and then he'll walk around and he works. He's in the trenches with everybody else. He just doesn't point fingers, and he'll give everybody instructions, and then he'll go back, they'll talk about it. Well, what about this, what about that, let's do this, let's work on. So he'll strategize and create with everybody. So you can figure everything out, and if you don't have a way of getting a team together and managing a team, you're doing it yourself. And if you don't know how to do it, you're going to have some challenges.
Yeah, a solid plan with improper execution is still
doesn't go anywhere.
Doesn't exactly. You can have the best plan in the world.
So that's been a big part. So there are a lot of moving parts in this world. They all got to come together. The YouTube videos, as I was telling you, they don't do this a lot of justice. You need to get some solid information, where to go, what to do, what to say, what to look out for, things like that, and you can do well at it. I mean, it's you know, like I was telling you earlier, the no money down thing, and while there's ways and people figure stuff out, you also need a little bit of money to get into this game.
Sure.
Because you got to be able to invest, have some money to make mistakes, to figure out what not to do, so you learn through the process, because it's a learning process until the very end, and that makes it, you know, that much more enjoyable. And it's the last year here has been educational. It's been challenging, but it's been a blast.
Sure.
You know, it's been a blast because I love the East Coast too. You know,
Yeah.
My heritage is here, so
Sure.
originally.
Yeah, I've always said, as far as managing teams and everything, is to train people to the point where they can go off and be successful on their own, but treat them to the point where they never want to leave. And if you do that, you will always have a successful team behind you. So.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, we just, believe it or not, you know, we won't do this for everybody, but we just, one of our really good workers, we just help them get a car.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So that's loyalty.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'll put that out there. There's a give or take, but he's been with us. He struggled getting to work. He wanted to get there. He was getting rides, and you know, he came to us and asked for help.
Sure.
So we put it out there, and we put the help towards him, and he's back at work.
Yeah.
So
good. That's tremendous.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. I'm happy to hear that. So. All right. Well, if you don't have anything else to add.
No, I think we've covered it all.
Thank you
That was
so much
good.
for
Thank
having
you.
me.
Absolutely.
thanks for coming.
It's
This
been a
was a
blast.
blast.
But all right, guys. I'm Johnny from Harvey Goodman, signing off from the Ohio Valley Real Estate Reports. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.